Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm here with just a quick video on how to do today's assignment 415 context. First, I want to say if you have not completed your argument about the effects of money, or if you completed it and I gave you feedback, please go and check that out. That's a pretty huge grade for the second marking period. Make sure that is done. Make sure it is revised. Email me if you have questions, or check PupilPath. And if your grade is not what you want it to be, or you're confused about why you have a missing grade, please email me on that too. But let's talk about today's assignment for context. So increasingly, while I think about the AP test that you guys are going to do in May, and I think about what's going to make the difference between a basic score of a 2 or 3 and perhaps a more advanced score of a 4 or 5, I think context plays a lot into it. Rhetorical situation, thinking about what's going on in the world when this political cartoon is made. So here's what you're doing today. For this assignment, you will need to reference back to the cartoon you chose on 413. So on Monday, you chose a political cartoon. This is the one that I'm working with here. I don't think any of you chose this one because I didn't show you this one, but this is the one I'm going to work with for today. Now, my first step is to research context. So political cartoons are often published in direct response to a major event. Look at the date your cartoon was published if you can find it. Let me see if I can find mine. Mine is published on, so I actually don't know. However, this is obviously Easter, so we know that this is Easter time. And just by paying attention to the news, there's some other stuff about the context that I might know. So if I cannot find the date, look for clues in the cartoon that might indicate what the artist was responding to and what was going on in the world directly before this cartoon was published. So when I look at my cartoon, what was going on in the world? Well, it was Easter. People were wearing masks. It even mentioned social distancing here. Those are pretty major things that are going on. I also just know from my own research that in some parts of the country, police are arresting people or fining people who are not observing social distancing. So already there are a couple different pieces of context that I can know. For example, sometimes cartoons are published in response to a speech a politician makes, a major news story, or new development. So the new developments for me here are social distancing is a new development, Easter is a new development, and the police arresting people. Now, step 2 is a little vague. Fill in the chart below with details that relate to the context. Watch the video from today's lessons for guidance. This is the video. So, some of the details I noticed that relate to the context are, I'll do here, the Easter Bunny is being arrested. I have another detail is people, even the police officer, are wearing masks. Another one, excuse me, is just the Easter Bunny itself is a detail that relates to the context. Is there any other details that relate to the context? Perhaps just a mention. Oh, you know what? The mention here of essential, the Easter Bunny says it's Easter. I was just hiding eggs for all the children. Hey, I'm an essential service provider. So I'll put here the detail will be the quote, essential service provider. And okay, so now the relationship to context, the Easter Bunny is being arrested. The relationship to context is that recently police have begun arresting and fining people who are not properly socially distancing themselves. Good. The people are wearing masks. There were new guidelines from the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, about masks. So let's just Google that. CDC masks. So here's the CDC. This was new. I don't know if you paid attention to this, but for a while the CDC was saying you don't need to wear a mask. And they said you do. I'm trying to find when they even tell you how to do it. That's amazing. I'm trying to see when they said this. I'm trying to find a date. Let me look under news. These look more recent, but this was within the past week, right? New guidelines from CDC in the past week suggest that people wear face masks. Easter Bunny. The relationship to context is this this cartoon was released around Easter time, and the fact that the essential service provider here is the reason that this relates to the context is essential service providers are still able to work. All others are expected to stay home. Now, for some of you, finding the context is going to be harder. Finding the details is going to be harder. If you don't know a lot about, let me see if I can find an example. If you don't know a lot about this one, for example, is really hard, the one on my screen right now, you would need to know a lot about the context. You would need to know that Peter Pan is originally British. You would need to know the context of like going to Never Neverland. Here's hand sanitizer. This here, the UK with Boris, unless you know something about British politics, you might not know that Boris Johnson is the leader of the British government and that he was under quarantine. So there's like a lot going on here. If you choose a cartoon where you do not know the context, please email me today. I will absolutely help you out. There's just going to be some information that you might not know, especially if you've not been following the news. But the context is so important here. So if you need help with context, please email me. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing what you come up with for context by Friday. And I hope everyone's staying safe and staying comfortable at home. Bye, guys.